This has been recorded. There you are. So everyone who registered will get a copy of this recording along with the slides, and that should be coming to you tomorrow or the next day, probably tomorrow though. But why don't I go ahead and start sharing my screen and we can get started. I apologize for the clumsiness if I am anything like I usually am. So let me, are you able to see my screen? Let me see here. Here we are. Okay, this looks better for me. Okay, here we are. Thank you so much. Well, Megan gave me a great introduction, but since it's here in the slide, I'll give it anyways. My name is Jonathan Hughes. I'm the Associate Director of College Planning and Content Creation at MEFA. And yeah, I've worked at MEFA for over 20 years. So I've been talking with families that long about sending their kids to college and how they can navigate financial aid and borrow and do all that stuff, but hopefully how they can start first by saving. So, if you don't know that much about MEFA, MEFA is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. We were created by the state legislature back in 1982, and we have a mission to help families to plan, save, and pay for college. And so we do that in a variety of ways. Initially, what we were created to do was to offer a loan. And that's something that we still do. So we have our MEFA loan. However, since 1982, as you may have noticed, of course, the cost of college has gone up quite a bit, and just offering a loan wasn't really enough to fulfill the mission that we have. So we added a couple of savings programs, which I'm going to be talking about tonight. The MEFA U plan, which is the prepaid tuition program, and the U fund, which is the Massachusetts 529 plan. And so one of the things I want to be clear about tonight is that I'm not here really to sell you on any particular products. First thing I want to do is just promote the idea that saving is important and that any way that you do actually save, it's better than not saving. So any way that's going to work for you, please do it. However, there are some ways to save that are specifically designed to pay for college or career, whatever comes after high school, and may go a bit further when they're used that way. And so 529 plans and prepaid tuition programs are among those. So I'm going to talk about those tonight. But a lot of what we do, in addition to helping families to pay with the loans and save with our savings programs, is how to plan for college. And that is really a lot of guidance that is for free, a lot of outreach like we're doing tonight, and education. So people know and have the right information at the right time for them to be able to take the right steps that are going to get them through college and college financing in the best way. So what I mean when I say all that is, if you have any questions between now and the time that your child's going to college or even after, having to do with sending your kids to college, please look at MEFA as a free resource, because in fact we are. So call us, email us. Our information, our general information is near the end, but also when you get the recordings and the slides, you'll have my info as well. So please feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions that you might have. And tonight, please feel free to use the Q&A in the Zoom room here, so that if you have any questions as we're going through, just ask those questions and I'll answer them. And if I know that the answer is coming, I might just hold off. I'll be around afterwards as well if you want to have any other conversations after the fact. And as I said, my information will be sent to you. So ask your questions when you have them. So what we're going to talk about tonight, the webinar topic's why save. So you're here. So again, I think you have an idea that saving might be important for college, but there are some specific messages that we like to give people, show them why it's important and how important it is. We're going to talk about those two Massachusetts savings options, the U plan and the U fund. I'll give you some more details on those, as though, as I said before, any way that you actually do save is a good way. We'll talk about some strategies for saving. So what are some tips? What are some strategies that people have used in the past, including me and other people who work at MEFA who are also saving for their kids to go to college? And then how families actually do pay for post-secondary education. So post-secondary education just means anything that comes after college. So I mean, everything that comes after high school. It could be college, could be career training. The idea isn't that everybody has to go to college, but just whatever, you know, you are going to be doing, your child is going to be doing after high school. You just want to have a good plan in place and some resources to help them through with that transition to whatever that is. But, you know, as I said, I've worked at MEFA for over 20 years, and the most common question I get from parents when they're sending their kids to school is, how do people do this? So we'll talk about the real cost of college and how people actually do pay for college. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And once again, I just want to remind you to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, so the most important thing I want to get through, so it's the very first slide here, is two myths that we've heard about saving for college. And this is often something that these myths, they prevent people from actually saving for college, and they should not. The first one is, my savings will hurt my financial aid. So we're going to talk about financial aid in a little bit more detail near the end of the presentation. But a lot of people sometimes think if I save for college, college is going to see that I have this money saved, and they're not going to give me any financial aid, or they're not going to give me as much in a scholarship or a grant as they would have if they see that I have, you know, some money saved. The truth, no. There are a couple of ways that colleges and governments determine how much aid you're eligible for, and we'll talk about those later on. But really, when you are applying for financial aid, when you're filing your financial aid forms, and that is going to happen in the senior year of your child's high school education, the most important thing in those calculations, the most important metric that they're going to use to determine how much you're eligible for is income, not assets. So they're going to look at the parent's income as how much you should, when they're looking at how much you should be able to pay for college. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but just know that financial aid and saving affects your financial aid quite minimally, if at all, for most folks. The second one is, it's not worth saving for college if I can't save the entire cost. Now, every year around August or September, you hear stories in the news. It now costs X amount of dollars to go to this college. They usually pick the most expensive college in the area. And, you know, people see that number and it's huge and think, God, how could I ever save that money? I remember when my son was born, and my colleague used a future college cost calculator. This is 10 years ago now. But she said, oh, let's see how much college is going to be for your son by the time he goes to college. And we chose like a 4-year private college in Massachusetts. And it was a huge number. And I immediately felt, oh my God, I could never save that amount of money. And that's true. I probably can't save all of that money. However, it's important to know that there is financial aid available, and that very, very few families are actually going to be asked to pay that full cost of college. So that huge amount should not be your savings goal necessarily. And so anything that you actually save is something that you don't have to borrow. If you're not saving, how are you planning to pay? And I think a lot of people think, well, maybe there'll be scholarships, maybe there'll be things, but they're not really making a plan. So if you don't save, you end up borrowing. And so anything you save is something that you don't have to borrow. So even a little bit of savings can go a long way. And we also know from some research that's been done that even having a little bit in savings has an outsized impact on whether a child will actually attend college or graduate. So I will tell you this, and it sounds like you know, a line, but it's absolutely true. I have never talked to anyone in my 20 some odd years working for MEFA that has regretted saving. Everybody says, well, I'm glad I have this. I wish maybe they say, I wish I had a little bit more. but they're always glad that they have saved what they saved. So your savings will help you. And in fact, that is the title of the next slide. Your college savings will help you. So it can increase the amount of colleges that are on your child's college list when they're applying to colleges. Really, the biggest thing, it can reduce or eliminate the need to borrow loans. So there'll be some financial aid, you know, for all of you at some level, or most of you. Like I said, I can't say for absolute certain, but the vast majority of families are qualified for some level of financial aid. So really, this is the biggest thing for me. If you have some savings to pile onto your financial aid, it can really reduce or eliminate the need to borrow loans. It allows the student to work less and study more. And as I mentioned earlier, it really does have a minimal impact on your financial aid eligibility. And we'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. But just so you know, your college savings, it really will help you. There's really no downside to saving for college. Now we're going to talk about two specific Massachusetts savings options. The first one is the Massachusetts 529 plan. Now, 529 plans have kind of become maybe the college saving vehicle of choice for a lot of folks. And what they are is they are tax advantaged college and career savings programs. So they were created back in the late 90s, and every state was then tasked with creating their own 529 plan. And the U Fund is the Massachusetts 529 plan. This is a MEFA program, and how it works is you open an account, you put funds into the account, and those are invested in the market. So this is an investment vehicle. We have partnered with Fidelity Investments to handle the investments and to service the account. So I have a couple of U Fund accounts myself. And so when I'm checking on my U Fund accounts for my son and for my nephew, I call Fidelity, and they can give me all the information, the balance, and how it's doing, etc. And so basically what happens is those funds grow with the market without taxes. And then when the time comes to use the money, as long as you use them for qualified educational expenses, you pay no taxes on the earnings. So that's the tax advantage there. So what are qualified educational expenses? The things like tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, and equipment. There's quite a lot of things that you can use 529 expenses for and not pay tax on the earnings. And just because this is the Massachusetts 529 plan doesn't mean you have to use these funds for a college in Massachusetts. It can be used for any accredited college in the country, actually even some foreign institutions, as long as they're set up to take U.S. federal funding. So if they're set up to take U.S. federal funding, you can use your 529 money and not pay taxes on the earnings there. Actually doesn't even have to be used for college per se. So it can be used for career training programs, vocational training programs, as long as, once again, those institutions themselves are set up to take U.S. federal funding. So there's a lot of different things that you can use the U Fund for. It's one of the great strengths of 529 programs. The combined account maximum is $500,000. So what that means is, I have an account for my son. If my mother has an account for him as well, the total of those two accounts together for my son could not exceed $500,000. If it does, I can't put any more funds into it. That's not a problem that most people are going to end up having. If it's a problem that you've got over $500,000 in a U Fund, well, that's a good problem to have, but most people probably won't have it. The more important thing to note is that there's no minimum to open an account. So there used to be a $50 minimum to open a U Fund account, but there is no minimum now. You can open an account with $10, $5. You can open an account with nothing and then choose to fund it later. And there's no annual account maintenance fee. So what that means is that there's not a fee that you're going to have to pay out of pocket to be a part of this program. There are fees associated with the U Fund, as there are with all 529 plans, but they're taken out of the earnings in the investments. Now, it does say multiple investment options are available. So this is one thing you should know, that when you're going through the application and you're, filling it out, there are a couple of investment questions, and you're going to have to choose how you want this money invested. Now, if you're like me, you don't know anything about investments or anything about the stock market. So this is where we can also lean on Fidelity, because they can advise you, they are trained, and they are authorized to sort of advise you on how you might want to invest. And so there's only 2 questions or so, but I know that a lot of times when people are going through this, that makes them nervous. They're not quite sure how to invest. I'm always happy to say that when I was setting up my first U Fund account, I was able to call Fidelity at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning and get through to somebody. So I'm happy to be able to personally vouch for how helpful and available they are. And also, you should know, if you choose an investment strategy that you find out maybe you don't like it later on, you can change that. So nothing is set in stone when you do this. And so the contact information for Fidelity, or how you start this process, fidelity.com/ufund, or you can call the number there, 800-544-2776. They're around from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And obviously they got weekend hours because I get through to them. But they're very available and happy to help. Now, a couple of what if questions come up with this plan, right? What happens if my child doesn't end up going to college? So if that happens, there's a couple of different things. Remember, first of all, that you don't have to use these funds for college per se. So if your child is going to go into a training program, whether it's a vocational training program or some other type that are eligible, you can use the 529 money for that. If they're not, you can transfer the beneficiary on this program, so that, if you have another sibling or a cousin or somebody else in the family that might be able to use the funds, you can just transfer the account over to that person. If you are lucky enough that the child does go to college and graduates their undergraduate program with money left in their 529, and they want to use it for graduate school, 529 funds can be used for graduate programs. Now, if none of these things apply and you do have to take funds out, then there are penalties associated with that, and we should be clear about that. However, we should also be clear that the penalties are only assessed on the earnings, not with what you put in, but on the earnings of the account. And there's 2 parts to the penalty. There's a 10% penalty on the earnings, and then the earnings will be taxed at the owner's rate of income. So you lose that tax benefit. There are 3 exceptions to the 10% penalty, which are death and disability of the student, but then also scholarship. So if a student gets a scholarship, you have to take funds out, you can't use them for how they were originally intended, then you're not going to be assessed that 10% penalty on that scholarship amount. However, even in those 3 cases where you don't have the 10% penalty, the earnings are always going to be taxed at the owner's rate of income. Now, there's been some recent expansion of qualified expenses for 529s as well. I mainly stuck to the college expenses there and some vocational training programs, but there's been some expansions, as you can see here, up to 10. You're able to use up to $10,000 annually for K through 12 education. You're able to use up to $10,000 annually for textbooks, fees, and equipment for apprenticeship programs. And you can take a one-time $10,000 disbursement to repay student loans. So I think that's important, but also it's important to note the trend in 529 plans has been towards more expansion. So when they were first announced in the 90s, when they were first created in the 90s, you had tax deferred growth, but then when you cashed out, the earnings was taxed. Then there was a temporary suspension of that tax, and then it became a permanent suspension of that tax. And now there are expanded 529 uses as well. There's another tax benefit that we'll talk about in just a minute too. But now I want to talk about the other program that we offer, which is the U-Plan prepaid tuition program. This program is actually a bit older than the 529 plans. this is one of the earliest prepaid programs in the country. It's the second oldest. I think Michigan maybe had one first, and then it was Massachusetts. So this is 1995. It's a really unique program. So it takes a little bit of explaining. But just to let you know, Fidelity handles the U Fund accounts. US Bank handles the U Plan accounts, but for many, many years, they were handled in-house by MEFA. So I was able to see U Plan accounts when people called and they wanted to use their money, or they had questions about their account, they were talking to me, or they were talking to, one of 3 or 4 other folks at MEFA. So I got very, very familiar with the U Plan. And so I really, really like the U Plan. It's a niche program, but it can do really, really well for people. And so it takes, as I said, a little bit of explaining. So, well, I'll start by saying how it's different from the 529 plan. The first thing I'll say is that, how the 529 plan works, you invest money, it grows the market, and then you take and use the funds. The U plan works different than that. You open an account, and you can open it just like the U Fund pretty much at any time during the year, and you put money into the account. And so the money is not invested in the market for the U Plan. It's invested in bonds that are backed by the full faith and credit of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And depending on the amount that you put in, you're locking in or prepaying up to 100% of tuition and mandatory fees at participating colleges. And so all the participating colleges are in Massachusetts. So this is a very sort of Massachusetts-focused plan. So there are over 70 participating colleges and universities in the plan. And so it probably works best to use an example. So let's say I open an account for my son. I put in $1,000 just to make the math easy for me. The reason I said $1,000 other than that is that there is a $300 minimum to purchase a U Plan certificate to lock in any percentages of tuition. You have to put in at least $300. You can open a U Plan account and put in $50, $100. You can add to it every month or what have you. But there's a one-time bond purchase, since these are invested in bonds, which happens in the beginning of August. And so what happens then is that we take all the money that we've received from you in your account and use that to buy a bond or invest in a bond. And so you have to have over $300 for us to be able to do that. If you've got less than that, your money will sit in the account at US Bank and will continue to gain interest. And maybe next year, if you're putting in money in throughout the year, it will go in if it's over $300 and you can purchase a bond. So that's an important distinction between that and the U Fund as well. But anyways, let's say you put in $1,000. And one thing you have to do is say, okay, what year do I want to use this money in? And so you want to pick one or more of the years that the child is going to be in college. So again, I'm just going to use my son as an example here. He's 10 years old. I'm going to say, okay, he's going to start college in 8 years. So I'm going to put in $1,000 and I'm going to say he's going to start college in 2032. Okay, so I got $1,000. I'm putting that to year 2032. And that is going to lock in whatever percentage of tuition $1,000 is at each participating college or university in the program. So let's say a certain college costs $10,000. I've purchased 10% of tuition for 2032 at that college. So because it's $10,000 now. Let's say that by the time my son gets there, 2032, it's now $20,000. Well, I have 10% of that, or $2,000. So my $1,000 became $2,000 because I locked in that percentage of tuition. And as tuition went up, so did the value of 10% of that tuition. So that is how the program works. You're locking in a percentage of tuition at this year's rate for the future. So you're guarding against the increase in tuition at these participating colleges. And you can continue to add to that every year and still add to your percentages. Now, I know immediately what the next question is, right? What happens if my child doesn't go to one of those participating colleges? That's always the first question. It's the most logical question there is. If that's the case, again, much like the U Fund, you can transfer those funds over to another beneficiary within the family. If there's another sibling that may end up going to a participating college in Massachusetts, they can use it. If you can't use them as they are intended, you can cash out and get what you put in plus the interest back when the funds mature. Unlike the U Fund, there aren't tax penalties associated with that. So you just get back what you put in plus the interest, which accrues at CPI. So in most years, that is going to be much lower CPI than the increase in tuition. Although with inflation being where it's been lately, CPI has been pretty high. But typically it's worth more sent to a participating college if that's an option. For graduate school, I'm afraid it cannot be used for graduate school. But again, you can cash out, and once again, there are no tax consequences either through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts or federally. It's our bond counsel's opinion that there's no federal tax consequences for cashing out as well. So that is generally how the U plan works. Are there any questions about the U plan or the U fund, the way I've described them? I know there has to be some questions on the U plan at least, but anybody. And once again, there are over 70 participating colleges or universities. They're all in Massachusetts. They're public and private colleges that are part of the program. And as I said, every year you can contribute and lock in a percentage of that year's tuition at each participating college. We will send you statements every quarter and then an annual statement showing you what you have invested and what percentage of tuition that is at every participating college or university in the program. So you know, going forward, if you wanted to put more money into particular colleges, you could do that. Yeah. Okay, I see a question here coming through. What are the differences between the Massachusetts plans versus plans from other states? You can purchase plans from any states regardless of residency, right? Yes, you can. And actually, this is a great question for this particular slide here because, yeah, one thing you can do, I mean, just because you're in Massachusetts doesn't mean you have to save in one of the Massachusetts plans. Other states, almost I believe every other state, there may be one that doesn't, but I believe every other state has a 529 plan. And there are ways that you can compare plans, you can compare the investments, you can compare minimum investments, you can compare the maximum, account limits, etc. And, there may be some differences between state plans that way. And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There are other prepaid plans from other states as well. They're not every state has them, but I know that there are from Michigan, from Florida, from Virginia, etc. The prepaid plans typically work for the colleges in those states, right? They're usually those state programs. So the 529 plans are national or even international. But this may be important to you when you're considering these things, which is there are additional tax benefits above what we've explored already in Massachusetts in that you can deduct a certain amount of your contributions on your Massachusetts state income taxes. And so you're able to deduct up to $2,000 for married filers on their contributions to either U plan or U fund, and $1,000 for individual filers. So you can be in Massachusetts, be investing in these programs, and you're able to deduct up to those amounts on your Massachusetts state income taxes. But you do have to invest in the Massachusetts state plans to do that. You are not able to deduct contributions to other state plans. Now, other states actually have other tax laws that some states actually give you a tax break either way if you do go through their states or through some other states. But for Massachusetts, it's just investing in the Massachusetts plan. Limits are per filer, not per account. So what that means is that, if you have 3 kids and you're making contributions to all of them. And you say, well, I want to deduct 2,000, 2,000, 2,000 for each kid. You can't do that. It's just going to be 2,000 for you as a filer if you're a married filer, or $1,000 if you're an individual filer. But that's just an extra sort of incentive for people to save. And I think, that was something that a lot of states had done for a long time. We hadn't. So it's been about 5 or 6 years. And we had that. Yeah, Megan.
I have a little bit of an advantage here because I can speak up. Follow up on Anna's question, because I did just move here from out of state. And so what I'm hearing you say is, would it make sense to stop maybe contributing to our Indiana 529 and start a Massachusetts 529 if we want to take advantage of Massachusetts state tax
If you wanted to
incentives?
if you wanted to take advantage of the Massachusetts state tax incentive, then yes. But whether or not that would actually be worth it for you to stop doing your Indiana or rolling over your Indiana, that's another thing. You can roll over 529 funds from state to state. That would be
Okay,
between, you and your accountant or tax preparer or what have you. But in order to take advantage of this benefit, yeah, you'd have to be. Well, you could also keep your Indiana and just start a Massachusetts one and do that. So
right. Okay,
yeah. So you would want to do that. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you.
sure. But again, I'm not. I'm so petrified. I'm like, I'm not giving you tax advice. They always say you're not qualified to give tax advice. I know. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. And if you have them, just put them in the Q&A. Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is the baby step savings plan. This is a new, well, it's not new anymore, but a new-ish plan. And we're really excited about this. This is what's called a child savings account, and CSA program. And this is something that, again, a lot of states and a lot of cities had been doing. So we're really excited when in 2020 there was a new state treasurer was elected who really wanted to do this in Massachusetts. And what that is it seeds money into college savings accounts for children. So Baby Steps is the first statewide seeded college savings program. And what it does is it sets aside $50 for every child born in Massachusetts or adopted by a Massachusetts resident. And so that $50 is invested in a U fund, which the parents have 1 year from birth or adoption to open. And so if they open that U fund account within a year, $50 will be seeded into the account through the Baby Steps savings program. So if you know someone who is or may be affected by that and able to claim that, that's a great way. We know that people who start saving earlier, and we'll have more information on this later, tend to save a little bit more. And we just know how crucial it is that people start early. Not that I would ever say it's too late for anybody to start, but it's kind of like retirement, and that, the more you start, the earlier you start, the better it's going to be. So we're really excited about this. It's in the third year right now, and it's doing very well. So just to show you how important saving for college and career is at a state level, how seriously people take this. This is the type of program. There's also another program in Boston that's similar. So, as I said, a lot of municipalities, a lot of states have been doing work like this. Strategies for saving. So this is all great, but how do we know what are some good ways to save, right? And so people often have questions about this. I mentioned just one of them just a minute ago. Start saving as early as possible and use time to your advantage, even if it's just a little bit. This is going to be really important. Start with a goal in mind. I think that's great. I don't think you should, it should, if you don't have a particular goal in mind, it's fine. Just open an account, start saving something. That's better than nothing. We do have a tool that you can use to try to come up with a goal, and we'll look at that in just a minute or two. But yeah, I think the important thing is just to start putting some money away. Take advantage of unexpected funds. tax refunds, anything like that. You can put some or all of that into your college savings fund. Use automatic transfers. One of the things that we look at is how many people are saving directly from their paycheck or having their um, monthly contributions or what have you deducted automatically from their checking account. The story I always tell too, when my son was born, and we got, as part of a baby shower gift from MEFA, $50 to put into a U fund, which was the minimum at the time. Of course, we set it up. What kind of employee would I be if I didn't do that? And after about 8 or 9 months or so, I remember saying to my wife, "Oh, we got to start putting money into his U fund account." And she told me we had been doing that for about 8 or 9 months. I just never saw it because it was coming out automatically from my checking account. And if I don't see it, I just don't know it's not there. So we know that people have more success when they use automatic transfers paying for college. And the last one is, well, second to last one is actually my favorite, and that is get the word out to family and friends. So, people want to save for their kids, but it's not something that you have to take on entirely on your own, right? So this image here on the right is a gifting page that you can set up through Fidelity. They've engineered this so that people who are saving in the U Fund can set this up, and you see here there's a picture of the child. It says Isaac's College Savings Plan, and a picture of the child and what they might want to be and the year that they might be entering college. And also it's something that you can create a link to and just email out to the family and friends, and they can gift money directly into the college savings account. So that's a great gift to have for the kid, for the parents, really, too. Especially when a child is really young. And they don't know that they're not getting a toy, or they're not getting, something else. You just give that money directly in. But it's great for milestones, for birthdays, things like that. Finally, the last bit of advice is to involve your child in the process. And so, have your son or daughter look at their balance in their 529 account. Kids like to see how much they have. We just saying the other night, "Oh, we have this much saved for college," and the kids get excited about that because it seems like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but comparatively, but they really enjoy that. And also, you may want to have them save some as well. I mean, this always seems optimistic to me, but I always tell this story as well, that when I was doing this presentation once, there was a director of financial aid at a college who said, "I always made my daughter save half of everything that she got, whether she got first communion money or she got birthday money, whatever. Half of it goes into the college fund," which I thought was great. And she said, actually, even more than that, you had money to pay for college now, which is great. They had more money to pay for college, which is great. But it just became a habit. It just became a lifelong habit for her to save half of what she got. And I just think that that's a really great lesson to learn, and it's never too early to start that behavior. In fact, I asked her, I said, "Can I still talk about that? Is that still true?" And she said, yes, it was. So, it's great. I wish I had that myself, but alas, I don't. Oh, this is the tool that I was going to mention, or that I mentioned earlier, that will help you set a goal. And so we got this tool. This is really to answer a question that parents would ask me a lot, especially parents of young children, newborns, really. They say, "Okay, I just had a baby. I want to make sure that college is going to be paid for them by the time they get there, so I don't have to worry about it," which is great. And then they ask me, "How much do I need to put away every month to do that?" And that's really hard to know. It's a really tough question to answer because there's so much we just don't know yet, right? We don't know, first of all, what college the child is going to go to, and that's going to make a huge difference in how much they pay for college. We don't know how much financial aid that the family is going to get, which is also going to make a huge difference. So this tool, which is MEFA's college planning tool, it's on mefa.org/save. This allows you to sort of make an estimate of that. And so the way it works is you go in, you create an account for your family, and you put in some information, age of the child, it's going to estimate what age or what year your child should enter college. And then there are college cost calculators based on tuition increases every year for different schools or different types of schools. And you can put in different schools or different types of schools, and it'll show you what what the tuition should be by the time your child is going there. So that is that on the graph here, you can see the line going up. That's what that is. Now, if you put in some more information, you can put in how much money you have saved and then how much money you are going to be saving on a regular basis. It will say, okay, based on this percentage of return, this is what you should have by that time. And you can adjust that percentage of return too. So you do 5%, 6%, 7%. Again, I'm not a finance person, so I don't know what's likely. I don't have any real idea of what's likely or what isn't. So it will show you what the cost is and what you should have in savings to pay for it. And then finally, if you put your income information in, it should give you how much need-based financial aid you're eligible to receive. So I don't know if you can see this here, but it says, this family has a college cost for 1 year of $59,995. They're eligible for $7,073 in gift aid. So that's non-loans. It's not work study. It's money that's just gifted. So grants or scholarships coming off the bill. Based on what they're saving now, they should have about $32,000 to pay for college. So their shortfall for this year is $20,920. And that is 1 year. So think about that. There's year 2, 3, and 4 afterwards. And so another thing they can do here is receive some guidance on how to meet that shortfall. They can adjust their numbers. So you see, okay, if I start putting more in, if I look at some less expensive schools, what am I looking at? They can apply for scholarships on this tool. So there's really a lot of things that you can do on this tool. And it's actually much more comprehensive than that too. There are like yearly tasks that students can complete and earn their grade 1 badge or grade 2 badge or what have you. But to me, this is really kind of the heart of it here. It gives an answer to that question that I used to get so often and would not be able to answer. Oh, now this is a question here that I'm going to have, if I can figure it out, a poll question here. Where's my poll question? Polls. Here we go. Okay, so this is to show you the benefit of compound interest. And compound interest is sort of the idea that 529 plans work off of, which is it's not just what you put in, but it's the value that gets added to that through the investment. And so there's interest that gets added, but then there's interest growing on the interest. That's compound interest. And to show you sort of the benefits of starting early here, Julie starts saving $50 per month in a 529 account when her child is first born. Jonathan saves $100 per month in a 529 account beginning when his child is in 2nd grade. Okay, so I'm 7 years or so behind, but I'm going to double up. Who's going to have more money saved when his or her child turns 18? So I'm going to launch that poll right now, and you can put your answer in. I bet you're ahead of me on this. Give me another minute. Yeah, most of you figured it out. So most of you said Julie, and you were correct. So even saving half the amount means that she's going to have more. That I can't make that up, even doubling that for over 7 years. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get more info on this. No, we're pretty close. I didn't do too bad. But Julie starts saving $50 per month in a 529 account when her child is first born. She's going to have $21,536. These are estimates based on a 10%, 7% return on investment. So all hypothetical going through this. But the important thing to know is this: $10,000, 10,800 is what she contributed, and the interest earned 10,736. So almost as much interest as what she put in. Whereas I put in 13,200 and got 6,598 in interest. So I'm at 19,798. So not only do I have a little bit less, but my contributions didn't go as far by a lot because I was later. Again, I want to stress, even if you're past this point and your kids are a little bit older, it's still worth it to save. I have people asking me, junior year, senior year of high school, is it worth it to open a 529 account? And I would say sure. Because once again, if you're not saving, you're looking at borrowing, and at least if you're putting money aside and earning interest on it, it's something. So to that, I think I see another question here. Oh, the pros and cons of a Roth IRA versus a 529. That's a good question. It's probably a conversation I'd want to have with you separately because I'm not really an expert on Roth IRAs, but I know that there are limits to contributions and things like that. So it's something that I can follow up with you on. How families pay for post-secondary education. Okay, this is I really like talking about this because, once again, if anybody wants to put in the Q&A how much they think college is going to cost for a year for them, I always like to take the temperature of the room doing that. So what do you guys think? Okay, here we go. 100,000, 45,000. Okay. I don't think they're quite at 100,000 yet anywhere, but soon. Okay, well, that's great. Now, what I want to stress with this slide here is that there are lots of different types of colleges. Those colleges that you hear that I referenced earlier that it now costs $70,000 to go to this particular school in Connecticut, or $80,000 to go to this particular school in Massachusetts, whatever it might be. Those are going to be taken from this first category here, the four-year private colleges. And just so you know, this information comes from the College Board Trends in College Pricing. The College Board is the organization that does the SAT and the AP exam. Well, they also do research on college costs and financial aid, and this is a publication that they put out every year. So Trends in College Pricing 2023, this is a national survey for four-year private colleges. So four-year private nonprofit colleges, those are things like, Boston University or Harvard or Dean College or Emerson College or College of the Holy Cross, not state schools, private colleges. And so the overall cost nationally, the national average is $60,420 per year. So that includes everything, not just tuition and fees, but books, supplies, food and housing, and living expenses. All of that taken together. It's called the cost of attendance. And this is the national average for 1 year, 60,420. Now, being in Massachusetts, we're a little bit higher than that. We're higher probably than the national average for four-year private colleges. But that's what they are. So those are the biggest sticker price colleges, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But there are other types of colleges. So the next one down here, you see four-year public colleges. So public colleges, state colleges, these are your UMass programs in Massachusetts, so UMass Amherst, UMass Boston, Lowell, and Dartmouth. Bridgewater State, Fitchburg State, Framingham State, Westfield State. These are four-year public colleges and universities. And if you're a Massachusetts resident and you attend a Massachusetts public college, you have a discounted tuition. And so for an in-state resident, the average cost of a four-year public college for a year is $28,840. And we're closer to that in Massachusetts. But you can already see there's a big difference, about $32,000 in costs between the private and the public. If you're going to a public college in a different state than the one that you live in, you're going to lose that in-state discount. So you see that that's a $46,730 out of state for an out-of-state student. It's somewhere in the middle though, between the four-year private and an in-state four-year public. The third option we have here, and I should be clear, this does not come from the College Board Trends in College Pricing. This is from a publication called Value Colleges, University, Community College, or Trade School, which makes most economic sense. So these are vocational schools, right? So you might not go to college, you might go to a training program for a particular job. It's hard to say because there are a lot of different variances and variations on costs there and depending on the program. But the best information it is able to get is that it costs about $33,000 or less than $33,000 for the entire education. That might look like it's still pretty expensive, but remember, this is the entire education. It's not per year. So if we're looking at four-year colleges over here on the left, 28,000 is the lowest amount times 4. That's going to be a lot more than, slightly less than 33,000. And as I said, depending on your program, depending on your occupation, depending on the path you're taking, it may not be close to 33,000. So there's a lot of different variances there. Now, finally, we have the two-year public community colleges, and these are almost always the least expensive options for students, just in terms of sticker price, right? So here, the national average is $9,890 per year. Doesn't include food and housing. There was a food and housing cost associated, but in Massachusetts, at least, every community college is a commuter college, so there are no dorms there. And so we're pretty close to this in Massachusetts as well. As I said, these are most often the least expensive options of the two-year public community college programs. So you can get your associate's degree, and there are programs in Massachusetts where you can go and transfer directly in to a four-year public college after getting your two-year associate's degree, and only have to pay for 2 years of that four-year public college. And there are various levels to that program, so you may be qualified for things like a tuition freeze or even a tuition rebate every year, as long as you're making your certain GPA. So there are ways to get a four-year degree. There are ways to get a two-year degree with minimal to no debt, but there are ways to get a four-year degree through the public college route with minimal or no debt. So the first thing I want to stress is that it's not as simple as college is this super expensive thing. It's 100,000, it's 80,000, it's 60,000. It can be for the sticker price, but it doesn't have to be. There's lots of different types of colleges. The other thing is all of these figures are before financial aid, right? So this is why I keep saying sticker price. The sticker price is just the stated price. But as I said earlier, virtually every family is going to qualify for some level of financial aid. And so here's where we talk about financial aid. There are two types of financial, but actually before I get into that, I like to talk about the number, because in the most recent year that we have data for, 2022-2023, you can see that there was $177 billion in financial aid that was granted that year. The year before was somewhere around $174 billion. And, this is about where it's been. So there's a lot of money granted every year in financial aid. And I just don't think that that is really as well understood by people. People are aware that the cost of college is often very high, but they're not aware of the sheer amount of financial aid that's granted every year. Now, it can be granted based on two sort of yardsticks. The first one is merit-based aid. Merit-based aid is awarded in recognition of student achievement. So academic scholarships, athletic scholarships, artistic scholarships, whatever it might be, it's gift aid. It comes off the bill. You don't have to repay it. It's a scholarship. This typically is given out by colleges, and colleges really vary in their practices. So some colleges give out a lot of merit scholarships, some don't. It really depends. But when it comes to saving, this your saving has absolutely no impact. None of your economic information has any impact on your eligibility for merit scholarships or anything like that. Most financial aid, though, is not merit-based. It's need-based financial aid. And so this is determined on your family's financial need or your financial eligibility for aid. And so how do they determine what that is? They determine that based on the financial aid forms that you fill out when your child is getting ready to go to school. And there's a formula that you put in all your information, and it comes out with a number that they feel that you should be able to afford for a year of college. And the difference between that number and what your college costs is how much aid you're eligible for. So a lower number means you're going to be eligible for more aid. So if they think you can pay less, that means you're eligible for more aid. And this is what I was talking about earlier, that parent income is the heaviest element in that. So they take that at they take the parent income into the most consideration. Parent assets, very small. So anywhere from 3 to 5.6% of a parent's total assets are taken towards what they can pay for school. So by the federal methodology. So just to show you, there's a lot of aid, and that your aid impact by saving is minimal. Once you have financial aid offers from your college, so you're going to file your FAFSA, which is a free application for federal student aid. You're going to file any other financial aid forms you may need to file for colleges. You're going to get a financial aid offer from the college, and it's going to have, loans, maybe federal loans, maybe grants, maybe scholarships, etc. But there's probably, now hopefully there's not a balance after that, but there often is, right? So once you have your financial aid, there's only 3 ways that you can use to pay for college, and that's your past income, meaning your savings, your present income, which is your salary that you're earning while your child is in college. And I like to talk about that for a second because a lot of parents are not aware that there are monthly payment plans that you can get on. Interest-free monthly payment plan. So you can sign up for a small fee. And then let's say you decide that you can afford to pay, $300 a month. Well, every dollar of that is going to go against tuition. So over 10 months, that's going to be $3,000. Now, most people I know cannot afford to pay the entire balance of a year or a semester off like that. But it is worth it to pay what you can. Because if you get your financial aid, you got some savings, you're paying out of pocket somewhat, that's really going to reduce the amount of loans you take. And that's really the last thing that there is left after this point is future income. So past income saving, present income salary, future income loans. And so despite what a lot of people think, and I know why they think this, because we talk about student loans, most often students are not going to be able to be approved for a loan on their own without a parent or somebody else acting as a co-signer. And so whatever the monthly payments are on this loan is going to be important to you if you're a co-signer because you're responsible to repay the loan along with the student. So it's good to pay what you can, maximize your savings, maximize your aid, maximize your present income in the form of a monthly payment plan before you start to borrow. So next steps, you can start to save. If you haven't started yet, you can continue saving if you haven't done so. I mean, if you have opened an account, make sure you continue. Think about any more you can save. Talk to your child about college. You can use the tools on the MEFA.org site. You can interact with us on social media. You can join our email community. We'll send you 1 or 2 a month based on the age of your child with information that's going to be relevant to you at the time. Here's our social media information. I saw somebody ask if they will, if there's going to be a recording. There is going to be a recording of this email to you. So you have, again, my email and my phone. So you should use that. Let me take a look and see what the other questions. Oh, there aren't any other questions. Okay. Are there any other questions before I go? I will follow up with Amy on the well, I'll follow up with you on the question that you had. But oh, I see. No, okay, thanks. All right, well, thanks to you. Thanks everybody for being here and for listening to what we have to say, and hopefully you'll have a good night and good luck to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Good night. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Megan.
Bye.
Bye-bye.